Hey there guys, how are you? Welcome back to another awesome video, and it's time for another movie review. In today's movie review, keeping the theme of Halloween, spooky, eerie, stuff like that, we're going to talk about Coraline. So, same movie with the same, based on the same book with the same name, written by Neil Gaiman, something like that, Neil Gaiman, something like that, Gaim, I don't remember, I'm bad with that name. So, it's about a girl named Coraline, who kind of lives your sort of like your mundane sort of like day, basically your average day, average life, mundane life. Her parents work 24/7, so she one day finds this other world where she has another mother and another father, sort of, and they're a lot more energetic to the point where as if they want her back and they want her home, they want her here, and they want her to stay. And Coraline is kind of like in the middle of like, but as much as this is fun, I gotta be here and all these other things. And this movie really plays with a lot of comparisons and contrasts, and all, not just with its message, but its characters and its imagery. So obviously, it really has a distinctive feel. And this is directed by Henry Selick, who, if that name sounds a bit familiar to you, has written and or directed The Nightmare Before Christmas. So this is kind of like his area. This is his cup of tea when he made this movie. Because apparently there's a whole thing where Neil, the writer of the book Coraline, had Henry in mind to say, hey, I saw Night Before Christmas, I want to see that with the same thing, because they would have done live action, but they're like, no, I want to make this stop motion animation. This was the first Leica stop motion animation. So basically, the company that gave us this movie gave us Box Trolls. It gave us Kubo and Two Strings. Those phenomenal films. I don't know how great Box Trolls is, but I really, really loved Kubo and Two Strings. Very emotional, very not a heartthrob, but it's like tugs on your strings, literally. So this was Leica's first film and everything. And like I said, the imagery really contrasts. And to be honest, this feels like a Burton movie. And that's kind of the funny thing, because Selick worked with Burton on Nightmare Before Christmas. So this guy definitely feels like this movie feels like as if Tim Burton directed it, with the way the abstract is, with the imagery, the stop motion. It feels really genuine. It feels like the very comparisons and contrasts. So with up to the one world, you can tell that it's very just dull. It's kind of like losing color. It's lifeless, and making our main character more of a highlight, because Coraline definitely is distinctive from her environment. She wears a bright yellow raincoat. She wears a orange striped shirt, and she has blue hair. So, although it's not super bright, like this bright light in your face sort of thing, it still has that idea that you're in. So her life is this kind of like, it's got very dull, very gray, very bleh, meh, mush kind of colors to it. Like, even if there is color to it, it's very just dimmed down, but making it more better and special and interesting for our main character to have these sort of like almost tinted different color to her, making her feel like not necessarily the outsider, but make her feel like, obviously there's a difference here. When she's at that other world, you could see the colors, how now there's a lot more brightness to it. The energy is different. When she's in IRL, you could feel like how it's very rainy, it's always cloudy, it's never a sun in the sky, all this sort of mellow sort of things. The people are mellow and old and stuff like that, and everything's kind of depressing. And then you go to this other world, and it's very energetic, it's full of like this different feel to it and everything, that by the time you get to the end where Coraline wants to go back to her real parents, you start to see those abstract colors from the other world start kind of, not only are they getting brighter, but they're also the contrast within the world. because it becomes this sort of like, oh wow, this is such a wonderful world, and then it turns into like it basically turns basically up on its head and upside down and in reverse and all sort of angles, saying, hey, not everything is going to be as happy as they seem to be. Nothing as looks are deceiving. That's sort of like deception works in a movie like this. It's done a bit before. It's a bit cliche. Sure, I don't know I don't know where the sort of like looks can be deceiving, deception sort of message was first established. So I don't know. I feel like this movie has that neutral thing where it's like it's in that area of when it was becoming cliche, but at the same time not as bad as it probably is if, say, a movie was if a movie nowadays were to try to do that. So it definitely has that for it. And like I said, making the other world, once it sort of flips on its head, doing this sort of deception thing, makes it more kind of, oh, now it's kind of gone from these bright colors to like, now it's kind of gotten a little bit darker. Now it's kind of gotten a little twisted. And even the characters start to become more disturbed and the macabre. And then it kind of like, the worlds kind of switch reverse roles a little bit. The sort of bright, happy-go-lucky world kind of turns into this like utterly dark realm, and then the sort of depressing RIF of the real life kind of turns a bit better, makes things better, and it shows the contrast of the idea of how tough times can be in the real world, and how sometimes it's a bit too easy in sort of our imagination, if you will. I don't know. This movie is very ambiguous when it comes to its things. And if you don't know what ambiguous means, it's very like anonymous, very mysterious, very like it leaves kind of like some things on question. You're kind of a bit curious on how to interpretate this and everything. And sometimes movies are great when they do that. I'd give this one credit. I can't think of any others off the top of my head that you have that interpretation of how did this movie either end, what was its message, or whatever. So it's kind of like you decide, like, what do you think in your head? How did this go? And a lot of movies, when they do that sort of thing, they work very geniusly. You look at a movie like Inception, it does play with your mind a little bit. You look at something like The Matrix or Donnie Darko, all these weird, disturbed kind of like concepts make you think. And it's kind of like, it's a good type of thing. Because not a lot of people, when they go to see a movie, they want to think in their brain and use their noggin. So this is kind of one of those movies that, for a kid's film, this worked. And sure, like I said, not a lot of people want to use their brain. They just kind of want to just enjoy sort of what's going on and turn off your brain. But sometimes to question reality is a bit interesting, like the what if concepts and all sorts of like ambiguous monogamy and everything. So this, for a kids movie like this kind of worked. And to be honest, like the stop motion is fantastic. Obviously the colors are fantastic. The voice work is great. I like Dakota Fanning. So ironically, I like her in this movie, but yet I have a funny, like, very, like, mixed bag about her in general, because some of the things I've seen her in are good, and some things I've heard her in are kind of, like, not so great. So I have this kind of funny thing about Dakota Fanning. I will give her credit. I might get a bit of backlash, but I will give her credit. I might, in terms of her as an actress, I kind of like her a little bit more than her sister. Nothing personal. I don't know. There is something about Dakota Fanning, I think, that kind of like you could tell that she not necessarily shines, but you could tell she like upstages and everything and stuff like that throughout her scenes, and is definitely a great young actress at her time that she did this movie, because this movie came out in 2009, so it's sort of like a 10-year anniversary for this movie. So if you go back, Ellen, I'm thinking of her sister. Dakota was probably a lot younger, and the whole debate about young actresses and young actors, if they're good, not child actors, really weren't. Some have been good, some have been bad. This one's definitely a good one. Even though it's a voice work, it's still, you can feel her sort of curiosity. You can feel her sort of like her like basically her mind like basically having a big debate like what do I do in this situation? Do I stay in this fake fantasy or do I face reality? That's kind of the big concept here. I know I said this is kind of like something you can interpret it with its message, but the main thing is the contrast and the parallels between the worlds and sort of in a way this acceptance of reality and what is fantasy, what is reality. So how do you interpret that? But a lot of people say that this is very creepy and very scary. And I'm going to be flat out honest. This is not as scary as I remember it. I remember seeing this when it was when it came out. I don't remember sitting down in the theaters to see this, but I remember watching this on TV when I was probably in 09, maybe in 010, something along those lines. I remember sitting there, like, kind of like in a bit of, like, I was a bit creeped out a bit. I was kind of a bit shocked because at first I was like, oh, this is just a kid's movie. And then they kind of use, there's some adult content, adult language, all these little things that I kind of was like, whoa. Like, I was a bit surprised by it. It kind of threw me off. And I'm sitting there like, oh gosh, what do I do? Like, do I keep this movie going or do I switch to a channel and basically change it before my parents come in the room when I'm like wee little watching this weird kids movie that feels like an adult film or a PG-13 or something? But looking back on that, not as scary as I remember. And I don't know why people think this is very creepy. I get it. The imagery and the whole climax kind of gets a bit dark, but nothing too like, oh my gosh, like scarring and leaves you with chills and spine, stuff like that and whatnot. So, I mean, it depends on how you feel with like when it comes to scares and like imagery, but this wasn't really as scary. A lot of people say the book is, and I have not read the book, so who knows? I could be right, I could be wrong. I really don't know. One last highlight I do want to point out is I do like Keith David as the cat. I know it's not a super role for him, but Keith David is one of my favorite voice actors, so I gotta give him that credit right there. He's great, honestly. If you ever heard of the guy, he's got a phenomenal voice to use for any character, really. Mainly anyone that's very eerie, mysterious, or villain. He works excellent. So him just kind of being this cat's kind of funny, and even his sort of like the way the cat works in one world and the other is interesting. And this, obviously, even the side characters in this movie, how they are very parallel. Like this one kid that likes Coraline. And it's funny how, ironically enough, everyone in the real world calls her Caroline. And I think that's probably a subtle nod to the book, because I heard the book, Neil Gaiman originally wanted to name the book Caroline instead of Coraline. So it's maybe I'm wondering if that's a little subtle reference or a little Easter egg that people will get. But it's kind of funny how people in the real world call her Caroline. No one calls her Coraline. And then you go to the fantasy world, this sort of like dream world, if you will, everyone calls her Coraline. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, this kid that sort of likes Coraline he's very chatty. He's very kind of like not like obnoxious, but in the other world, he's just kind of like very quiet and everything. Excuse me. So even stuff like that's kind of neat. The other sort of thing, there's a whole other plot or subplot with that kid's grandmother, and there's ghosts involved and spirits, and how there's concept about like how people lose their eyes in the fantasy world. That's kind of like an unanswered sort of situation. Should they leave that unanswered? Maybe, because sometimes leaving things unanswered is a good thing, because if you get all the answers to your question, then it's not as invested. You're not as invested in that said thing. Like, let's take, for example, let's just take the concept of Freddy Krueger. Let's say you didn't know about his origin or anything like that. You were curious how this guy went inside your dreams and basically kill you. What is this person? Is he even a person? Is he a monster? What the hell is he? Is he a ghost? Is he a demon? Is he actually human? So if you have those questions kind of a bit answered, they kind of become this idea of like, oh, now the character's kind of not as interesting. He's fun, but still not as interesting. But it just depends on how your origin is taken. And I know I'm going to get so much crap for this, but I just want to point out this one little thing. And we'll talk about this for another video. But Joker's origin has never been a full-fledged origin. It's always been this idea of like, it's always been multiple choice, if that makes sense. But we'll explain that another time. So the idea of you have an unanswered, like your unanswered questions answered kind of defeats maybe your investment, or depending on how interpreted the origin is. So something like that should be left maybe unanswered. Everything else fits fine. I really do like this movie. It's just I don't find it as scary as everyone else says it is, and is it a bit cliche? Maybe so, but who knows? So I'm gonna maybe give Coraline. I'm gonna give Coraline a. You know what? I'm gonna give it a B plus. I'm gonna give it a B plus. So let me know what you guys thought of Coraline, and if you've read the book. If you've not, let me know. Is there a difference in tones? Is it a lot scarier in the book? Is it not? Is it the same deal? What's the situation? So as always, if you like this video, please smash the like button. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I do awesome videos every day, every week. On top of that, I'm gonna get in my review of a movie that I was requested to do by someone I know. So a silent voice, I think it is. So I'll review that next, and all sorts of Halloween-related, horror-related things and whatnot. All sorts of fun October little events we'll do. Maybe I'll start doing more horror movies. I'm gonna look into like stuff like from Wes Craven, stuff from John Carpenter, all sorts of Halloween classics that maybe you might know, or you might not know. So, is that I'm gonna maybe work on a few like ideas on like some top 10s, and maybe do some gaming. Not like I'm still working the kinks on that sort of concept with like the quality and everything else, and etc. So all sorts of stuff like that. I think don't quote me on this, but this Thursday might be the Thursday. I have a friend coming over. We're gonna do a really cool versus series. Not a versus series, but we're going to do a versus video. I'm not going to say what the game is because it's going to be total like chaos and very monstrous, so I don't want to give it away. But there's going to be that. I'm hoping this week or somewhere within the span of October, November, I could get in that collab with Brandon, with aka Kal-El Estrada, aka Lord Kelpo. Dude, if you're watching this, I know it's been difficult. Shit is kind of happening. Like, you got your own thing, I got my own thing, but just let me know. Just let me know what's good for you. I'm ready. I've got my Netflix. We can watch the movie. It's all good. Just give me a heads up. Let me know if everything's A-okay. I'll let you know if everything's A-okay, and we should be fine. I'm gonna do what else am I have? If I don't get in any other Halloween related stuff at the before Halloween, I might do stuff maybe in like the beginning of November, and that should be it for this first ever annual, like basically Halloween, like horror fest, horror month, whatever you want to call it. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.